Welcome back to a mental health break with Vincent A. Lanci. I'm excited to launch another episode for you all. I'm Vincent Lanci, speaker and author of the book Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption. When I was 21 years old, I was the victim of a hit-and-run accident while walking home from a friend's birthday. After coming out of a coma and suffering from a traumatic brain injury, or as you may know of as a TBI, I soon realized that it was time to put my mental health on a very, very high pedestal. This podcast is all things mental health. Would it benefit you to hear from mental health professionals and influencers? Would it also add value to your life to hear real-life, authentic stories from people talking about their mental health, the issues they face, and how they actively combat them? If so, you came to the right place. I want to start by congratulating you for making your mental health a priority. On this episode, I'm happy to introduce my guest, Dr. Anita Sanz. We actually met because I sent her a book once I received my author copies in hopes to make a difference together one day, and here we are. As I was searching for mental health influencers and doctors to connect with, she was at the top of many, many lists. I'd like to now introduce Dr. Anita Sanz.
Thank you for having me, Vincent.
It's great to have you, Anita. Why don't you go ahead and share a bit of your story and then touch on what you're working on today?
Sure. Well, I was so glad to connect with you and to hear about your story. I think I shared with you a little bit that I have a family member who's still in the process of recovering from TBI, so I'm really interested. I'm working my way through your book right now, but I love it, and thank you so much for writing it. It gives a lot of hope to people who are recovering from...
That's my goal, for sure.
Yes, from the effects of TBI, so thank you so much for doing that. I've been in private practice working with individuals from, lots of different walks of life, and the things that I have found that are the most important is fostering hope and helping people to become more and more resilient, and I think you and I are on the same page there.
Absolutely, Anita. Thank you so much for joining me again today. Something I do on each episode is I share a story of someone who's famous that battles mental health issues because I want all of the listeners to know you are not alone. I also want you to understand that even though someone may look healthy from the outside, they may be far from it on the inside. I checked out 2 articles from Business Insider to learn more about Michael Phelps and his mental health issues. I've heard about them briefly in the past, but needed to learn more. He's been very vocal about his mental health issues, but only after not being vocal for far too long. For many years, he battled untreated mental health issues and says this caused him towards dangerous behaviors. This includes getting pulled over for a second DUI charge in 2014 when he was speeding. Phelps now speaks on his story to help impact and save others' lives. He's been quoted saying that when he was at his low points, he wasn't even able to get out of bed. Not only did he not want to get out of bed, everyone, but he says, and I quote, "I didn't want to be alive anymore." He says that after each Olympics ended, his mental health took a complete and horrible downward spiral. After the 2012 Olympic Games, he said something very similar to that in, quote, "I wanted to die. I straight wanted to die." He eventually got the help he needed after that second DUI in 2014 and began using a lot of therapy. He wasn't that into it at first, like many people, but as he continued to go, he felt much better. I can relate to this personally because I was hesitant at first after my accident, and now I realize the major dividends that it did pay. He says that talking to someone is one of the most important things you can do, even though he does acknowledge everybody is different and unique. He carried stuff inside of him for 20 years, and he says he wishes he did not. He still actively works out, promotes water safety, and speaks on mental health. Hey, Anita, have you heard of Michael Phelps' story before?
I had definitely heard some, but I went ahead and did a little bit more research. I'm really, really glad about the work that he's doing promoting, talking about mental health and definitely seeking help when you need it. I'm really glad about that.
Very glad as well, Anita. Let's get into the main event. Each week, my guest and I will go over a series of 6 questions. My goal is to feature many valuable guests on this podcast, including people talking about their mental health, as well as doctors and influencers. I will ask the doctors who join the show a series of 6 questions, while asking my patients and non-licensed influencers a slightly different series of 6 questions. By doing this, it will allow me to deliver as much value as possible to you, the listeners. Let's get into number 1. Many would agree that the more common or talked about types of mental illnesses are mood disorders, anxiety disorders, and schizophrenia disorders. What areas do you come across the most?
Okay, well, in my practice, I specialize in the treatment of eating disorders. So I certainly see, that range, anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorders. But I pretty much, through the course of my lifetime, have just treated the range of things that people, will walk into my office with. So depression, bipolar disorder, all those mood disorders, anxiety disorders, panic disorder. I work in Florida, so with an older population, I'm also dealing with the psychological aspects of dealing with chronic illnesses and pain. And of course, I've always dealt with post-traumatic stress disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder. So pretty much whatever walks in my door, I'm special, I'm able to work with, but my specialty, of course, is eating disorders.
Well, your patients are very lucky to have you because you're so passionate about your field. When did you decide that a career relating to mental health was the right career for you?
Okay, well, as a kid growing up, I had always, I think, been interested in the field of psychology and mental health. I was certainly always drawn, towards, whether it was books, people's stories about their struggles, challenges. Even the artists in school that we studied who had mental health issues, I was the most interested in. My family background also, my father's side of the family were Holocaust survivors. And so this idea that people who have been through trauma and can become resilient and can heal through that. And while others may, look towards addictions to try to cope. It was always fascinating to me to try to figure out how can we help people, to heal, move in a more positive direction. So I think, lots of seeds planted early. But when I finally made the decision, going through high school, I was going to major in business. So, we were more on that page. I was going to be an economics major. And then the summer before my freshman year, I just started thinking, I really want to help people who are hurting. I really knew that's what I wanted to do. I changed my major to psychology before I even entered college, and ended up, doing some undergraduate internships in hospice, and it just felt right. I knew that's what I wanted to do. Although I end up, I own my own business now, and I kind of wish I had taken more business classes, as it turns out. But that's when I knew it was pretty early on.
Thanks for sharing that incredible insight, Anita. Kind of similar with me, although obviously a little different. I went to school for finance and my MBA, and although I'm not using them directly, I still apply them to my business, I think, on a pretty regular basis, and it helps me very much. What advice can you give our listeners as what may be a potential early sign that they may be developing a mental illness?
Such a good question, Vincent.
Thank
I actually wrote an answer to pretty close to this exact question on Quora. Kind of got picked up and sent out different ways because I think this is such an important thing for people to consider. So I tried to simplify it for people because I think it is a complicated question. So what I ask people to do is to think about, these 5 areas of their life. These are the big 5 that we're always asked to assess as a clinician. So your mood, your energy, your appetite, your sleep, and your sex drive. And then to look at these 5 things as it relates to these 5 areas. So first of all, look for extremes. So are you seeing an extreme in your mood, too high or too low? Are you looking at, again, extremes in appetite, extremes in sleep, extremes in sex drive, so extremes in energy, something that's not out of the norm? Okay, second, look for rapid shifts. So going from high to low, too much or too little in any of those areas. So not just extremes, but rapid shifting. Okay, that could be a sign of a mental illness. The third thing to look for in all of those 5 areas is abnormality. So it could be where either you or someone else is saying, this is not normal. This is out of the norm. Okay. The fourth thing is what I call dysfunctionality. So is it causing problems with either your daily life, your ability to function, or your relationships? And then the fifth thing is concern. Are you concerned about any of those 5 areas? Or are you getting feedback from someone else in your life that they're concerned about how you're functioning in any of those 5 areas. So to me, it is a really complicated thing to try to figure out, do you have a mental illness that's beginning to develop? Because it usually does happen very slowly. But I tried to make it really simple. Those are those big 5 areas. Look for things that are shifting, look for extremes, look for things that are not normal, look for ways that it's affecting your daily functioning, and are you or are other people concerned about it? And that's just sort of a quick and easy way to try to figure that out.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. After my accident, especially my anxiety was through the roof, and I still deal with anxiety, but not as prevalent, because once I was able to start walking again with my leg, utilizing the gym has become one of the most valuable resources I have. Obviously, not just for physical health, but for mental health as well. Me releasing those endorphins is unbelievable. If you had to pick 3, and only 3, Anita, what would the 3 most important things our listeners can do on a daily basis to start improving their overall mental health?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think it's fair that you're limiting me to 3, but
I know.
I know. Okay. So, so I thought about this, the 3 things, and you might be surprised that a psychologist is going to pick probably not the 3rd, but the first 2. Because most people might think psychologist is going to pick more touchy-feely kinds of things related to emotions. But the number one thing that I recommend that my clients should do if they really want to improve their mental health, first thing, exercise. Exercise 30 minutes, 5 times a week minimum. And the mental health benefits of exercise, I think, are even more significant than the physical health benefits. And of course, we have all of the research, to show for that. But my clients who will incorporate exercise into their life are doing themselves such an amazing favor. It has such a huge impact on their mental health. So that's the first thing. The second thing is also something you might not expect a psychologist to say, but it's clean up your diet, improve your nutrition. And that doesn't mean, be perfect about any of this. Just follow sort of what I call like a 90-10 rule. About 90% of the time, try to eat, food that provides some type of really good nutrition. And then the other 10% of the time, eat food for fun. It doesn't have to provide any kind of nutrition, but if you can really clean up what you're eating, that garbage in, garbage out really does apply to us as well as to computers. So I really advise that. And then the third thing, of course, is what you would expect a psychologist to say. And that is, I want people to develop some type of regular stress management habit. So that could be, meditation. It can be a hobby that you really love. It could be a sport. It can be a group activity, something that you do with friends. But it just needs to be something that you pretty much is like you protect as a non-negotiable. You work it into your life plan and you make a serious commitment to follow that. And so if you are pretty much making sure you're doing these 3 and only these 3, I'd like some other things as well, but if I had to pick 3, these would have the most profound impact actually on your mental health, I think.
I'll tell you what, since I know the answers are going to be so valuable, go ahead and give me 2 more.
All right. The other thing, and I sort of tried to work it in with the stress management, but it's improve your time with your friends. So more socialization, more time face to face. I know that sometimes the only way that some people can be social is online. And if that's the only way due to illness or distance, that's certainly acceptable.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but if you can, setting a time aside to be able to face-to-face spend really good quality time with your friends, with your family, that has a huge impact. And the other thing I would say is spending some time in nature. Now, exercise sometimes does take place in nature. Some people get out and they walk or they run outside. But a lot of people do that in gyms, and then they're not getting the benefit of what we know in psychology is the mental health benefits of being in green space. So we know that people who can spend a certain amount of time outdoors, whether that's just walking, whether it's on the water, whether it's gardening, but being outside in nature has such tremendous mental health benefits that is that's another thing that I would absolutely add in, and I advise it for my clients.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love going outside for my breaks. I'll take a 5 to 10 minute break every so often because the next thing I usually know is it's a 3 hour consecutive work stretch, and it could be a 2 a.m. till dinner day and not taking much breaks, but I've been trying to stay more on top of myself with it.
Right. And there are things that out in nature, just the ways that your mind focuses, the way that your eye literally focuses, the things that your brain and your body pick up on, the sensations, it provides a different type of stimulation to the brain, which is really good for people with anxiety and for depression.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. So those are some shorter term solutions. What are one or two longer term commitments our listeners can take?
Okay. This one's a little bit easier because you can kind of sum up. I can sum this up a little bit better. Okay. First of all, sort of the secret to good mental health, and different people have summarized it and put it into different, prayers or different slogans. But basically, it's focus on what you have control over and let go of the things that you don't. Okay. So, there's a million different ways to say it, but that's pretty much the secret. I've always said you're as mentally healthy as you can deal with reality. And so part of dealing with reality is figuring out what do you really have control over. And that helps you figure out what you're responsible for and what do you not have control over. So what do you need to learn how to let go of? So yes, it can be complicated, getting up the motivation and learning the habits so that you start doing what you need to do in the area of what you do have control over. And yes, it can be a little complicated learning how to let go of the things that you don't have any control over, but it still is. That's the basic plan right there. So if you can figure that out as a long-term commitment, I do think it's going to improve your mental health drastically. The second long-term commitment that I would like people to make, and it's pretty much sort of the core of what I've been doing for the last 10 years, at least in terms of my social media, which is I want people to make a plan for their life. So almost all of my stuff is, I had a babysitter, our favorite babysitter said, why don't you call your stuff Sanz Planz? It rhymes, people will remember it. Make a plan for your life. I try to teach people to be intentional about what they want to accomplish so that, based on your values, based on your goals, based on where you want to be in the future, you're making a plan. And then every single week, you use that week as a chance to experiment with moving yourself closer to that and trying out this plan and seeing what works and then, fine tuning what doesn't, and just get excited about having the rest of your life, to play with this. And so that's the other long-term, commitment I want people to make is make a plan, work it, fine tune it, enjoy the whole process. So that's the second thing.
Thank you so much for all of that, Anita. I really, really enjoyed the 90-10 rule. I do my best with it, but as the day goes on, sometimes I am guilty of eating something that I shouldn't, but I do work hard in the gym, so I think it's okay.
Give yourself 10% for fun.
Absolutely, but it motivates me to get through the day if I do slip up a little bit. Anita, it's time for the last word. Is there something you would like to share with everybody listening in that you didn't get to touch on yet today?
Let's see. I want people to know that, I think right now I'm involved in the Giving Voice to Depression podcast as well, and I'm on their board, and it's for suicide prevention. We're heading into the holidays as we're recording this, but actually suicide sort of peaks in the spring and actually heading into early summer. And Michael Phelps actually I know was one of the people who really was dealing with this issue as well. And so one of the things I definitely wanted to say is if people are feeling suicidal, I want them to know that there's hope. I want them to reach out. I'm really excited to just have found out that by 2021, our country is gearing up to actually have the 988 number as a suicide number.
I actually got a text message about that yesterday. I guess I don't know what. Just that maybe it was everybody got it then.
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome. It's amazing.
awesome. It's we've needed it for a really long time, and I'm really really excited about the possibilities with that. But that's really just about the other thing I want to say is that
Yeah, go ahead.
it's normal to struggle. It's normal for anyone dealing with really severe depression and even anxiety that can just cause a form of burnout where you just don't want to keep going sometimes. That's normal to feel like you want to give up, but we want you to stick around. We want you to see what the next chapter holds. And there are people there, just like me and you, dedicated to wanting to give you a chance to see what that's like. So just wanted to tell people to hang in there. There's hope, and don't give up.
Yes, yes, yes. I think it's very important for people to realize that it is normal to struggle and things will get better. Anita, can you please go ahead and share your social media or ways for our listeners to get involved with you, follow you, learn all about you?
Sure, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Sanz Planz, SanzPlans. I have a Facebook page, The Sanz Planz, and my website is anitasanz.com.
Absolutely, Anita. Thank you so much for sharing. Everybody listening in, I promise her content is so, so valuable, so be sure to check it out. Check out the show on Instagram and Facebook at A Mental Health Break and on Twitter at Podcast by Lanci. My website is vincentalanci.com with all my social media at Vincent A. Lanci, and that's including YouTube. Check out my book, Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption on Amazon now, but be sure to DM me or email me. I want to hear what you think. If you enjoyed listening to today's episode, please continue listening and rate A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci 5 stars. I work very hard to find value-delivering stories for you on each episode. And thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci.